Boy, we got exciting times here. Canon has released not just one, but two APS-C size sensor cameras, and that has caused a little bit of confusion because they both came out at once and there's a whole lot of information, so it's hard to find out the differences between the two cameras. So I'm here to talk about the major differences between the two cameras so that if you are interested in one, we'll see which one is better for you. Okay, let's talk about it. So first of all, these APS-C cameras have nothing to do with another line of APS-C mirrorless cameras that Canon has, the M-mount cameras. This is the M50, they have the M6 Mark II, and they take the M-mount lenses. These lenses cannot be transferred over to the new R10 or R7. You can use EF glass if you have an adapter, and of course you can use the R glass. Now a lot of the R glass is quite expensive, and if you're buying an APS-C body, you'll want smaller lenses that aren't necessarily that expensive, so hopefully they will get more lenses very soon in the R-mount that are specific for the APS-C style bodies. But right now, a good bet is to use an adapter and find yourself some nice EF glass. Of course, two new kit lenses did come with the two new cameras, so you can also use those. Not the fastest lenses in the world, but they'll get you through. Now, I shoot on a lot of different cameras. You saw the Canon M50. This is the Panasonic GH5. This is the Panasonic G7. I also have a lot of Sony cameras, including APS-C style cameras. I have a lot of cameras. My wife tells me to sell them and I say, no, just go make more money. That's what I say to her. That argument does not go well. And I will be doing videos that compare the R10 and the R7 to the Sony APS-C line and the other APS-C cameras out there. But right now we're here to talk about the major differences between the two new releases, the R10 and the R7. And in terms of the Canon R naming system, if you're confused, it is just the smaller the number, the higher the price. They are inversely proportional. So you have an R10, that's going to be your cheapest R camera, and the R3 right now is going to be your most expensive R camera. And if it goes to the R1, then that'll probably be their most expensive. Do you see what I'm saying? R10, R7, R6, R5, 3, you get it. Now the R10 has a 24 megapixel sensor and the R7 has a 32.5 megapixel sensor, and that will be good for especially if you want to crop in on your photos. That extra megapixels, that's going to do you well. But most people are fine with the 24 megapixels when it comes to photo. There is no headphone jack on the R10, which is unfortunate. There is a headphone jack on the R7. Now the R7 does not have a pop-up flash, whereas the R10 does have a pop-up flash. But with the pop-up flash comes even worse weather sealing, whereas the R7 has some weather sealing. The R10 has the typical dial on the back that a lot of photographers are used to and videographers, whereas the R7 has implemented a new design around the joystick button. There is a circle, like a vertical circle. So the wheel, instead of being down on the body, is now up around the joystick, and some people really love this and some people don't. But anyway, it is a difference between the two cameras. They both have a 2.36 million dot EVF, but they're not created equal. The R10 has a 0.59 times magnification, and I think the R7 has something like a 0.71 magnification, so the viewfinder will look better on the R7. The rear LCD screen is also better on the R7. It is a 1.62 million dot rear LCD screen, whereas the R10, it has the 1.05 million dots, so much lower resolution. So you get 23 frames per second in electronic shutter in photos in the R10, and you get 30 frames per second using the electronic shutter in the R7, and that is a fast burst rate for sure. However, there are reports of a fair amount of rolling shutter. Even Canon themselves is recommending you shoot through the mechanical shutter, and luckily the mechanical shutter is also quite good. It is 15 frames per second on both cameras, so that is an excellent mechanical shutter burst rate, and I would certainly use the mechanical shutter because you don't want to see the jello lines, you know what I mean, when you're taking the photos. Also, the shutter in photos can go to 1/4000 for the R10 and 1/8000 for the R7, so that is quite an advantage when you're out on a nice bright sunny day, you know, get that high shutter speed. Now they both shoot 4K, and the R10 downsamples its 4K from 6K, so that should be quite sharp. Sony APS-C cameras, they do the same thing, and it's quite a sharp 4K. You downsample from 6K. Now the R7, that can be downsampled from 7K. So that, like an A7 IV, should be even sharper. So that should be a very good 4K. And they can both shoot 4K 60, but there's a caveat with the 4K 60 on the R10. It is a 1.6 times crop in 4K 60 frames per second, and on the R7 it is a 1.8 times crop. So quite a crop in on the 4K 60, but it's great that it's there. Now in the R7 you can actually use the 4K 60 with no crop. It uses the full width of the sensor, but it appears to be some kind of line skipped image, so it's going to be softer. Canon themselves says if you want the sharper 4K 60, use the crop mode. But it is nice that they give you the option. In fact, you can also do that line skipped full readout sensor mode for 30 and 24p as well. Now this one is a major difference between the two cameras. The R7 has a 5-axis in-body image stabilization. They got the old IBIS, whereas the R10 has nothing. I mean, it has an electronic stabilization, a lot like the M50 has an electronic stabilization. And the R7 also has that electronic stabilization, but it has the 5-axis stabilization built in the body. And according to Canon, with certain lenses, you can get up to 8 stops of stabilization, which is crazy. That is like Olympus level, you know, not the mountain, the company, the OM system level type stabilization. So that is really great to see. And also with that IBIS comes an auto leveling, which is in addition to the typical auto leveling that they had on, like say the M50, where it tries to level out your footage for you. But this one, with the R7, it uses the actual IBIS to do it on top of the electronic parts of it. Now this one is a really big one for me because I like to shoot in 10-bit, and both the R10 and the R7 have the ability to shoot in 10-bit in the HDR mode, but only the R7 has C-Log3 with 10-bit. So I wish that was on. In fact, I wish both cameras just let you do 10-bit in all the modes, but I at least wish the R10 had the C-Log3. That is a tough one for me when I like to grade using 10-bit like I have on my little GH5 here. The Canon R10 only has one card slot, and it is located like my G7 here at the bottom of the camera under the battery door, whereas the R7 has 2 card slots, and that has their own door on the side, much easier access, and you have the 2 card slots. Another big bonus for the R7. Now they both feature a USB-C connection, but the R7 has the 2nd generation, the 3.2, whereas the R10 has the older generation, the 2.0, so much lower data transfer on the R10. There's also an infrared sensor on the R7, but not on the R10, so you can use the infrared remotes with the R7. And finally, the R7 is a bit bigger than the R10. The R7 is, 612 grams, and the R10 is 426 grams. So it's a nice lightweight camera, but people are reporting that, I haven't got to touch these cameras yet, hopefully I'll get them in soon, but that the R7 is a better build. It feels better in the hand. That little bit of extra size actually makes the camera more comfortable, but it remains to be seen. Anyway, R10 is a lighter and smaller camera. That'll help for things like gimbals. So, you know. And now, of course, we're going to mention the price. The R10 is a quite reasonable $979 US, and the R7 is $1,499. Now, the R7 is a more compelling option, but it is a nice bit more expensive. Here in Canada, it's $2,500 plus tax, and we have a lot of taxes in Canada. So, you know, to me, that is, well, it's the same price right now as the full-frame Sony A7C with its kit lens, you know? So those are things to be considered. They are different cameras for different folks, and if you have a lot of Canon glass, it makes a lot of sense, but I'm just saying, it is not the cheapest. It's not like an entry-level camera. It's a bit pricey, but it does have some great features. But the thing is, if you want to have something like this, like a locked off shot, you're going to do tripods, or when you take your landscapes, you're going to, use a tripod. The R10 may be plenty good for you. It's going to have really sharp 4K with that Canon autofocus. It has 120 frames per second in slow motion. It has a 4K 60 mode, yes, at a crop, but it has it, and it's got a great burst rate for sports shooters, for wildlife shooters. So the R10 maybe all you need. Now, if you want to do those C-Log 3s and the 10 bits, and you're going to do a lot of handheld photos and videos, the R7 has got to be the way to go, especially, if you can't lose your footage, or if you're worried about a corrupt SD card or something. Let's say you're shooting a wedding, the R7 is how you're going to have to do it. Anyway, I hope this helped, and if you're looking at the two cameras, that you understand the differences between the two more clearly now, and perhaps can make a better informed decision. I will do more videos comparing these cameras to other cameras, and we'll have some fun. We'll talk about, I love when new cameras come out, because A, it makes me excited, but B, it pushes all the companies to bring things out, and up their game. So thanks, Canon. So anyway, I gotta go edit out all my ahs and ums and mistakes. I mean, I said this all in one take, fluidly, perfectly, because I'm a professional. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.